Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 1 of a podcast that we are going to be calling Hero's Journey, the official superhero podcast of comics and superheroes for the website CBR. My name is Sean O'Connell, and I'm the deputy editor of comics and superheroes on the website at CBR. And listen, don't feel bad if kind of right off the bat, you are confused by what this show is. Like, what is this? And since when did CBR have an official podcast dedicated to comics and superheroes? And probably more importantly, do we really need another podcast in this world? And the answer to that is probably no, but we're going to give it a shot anyway, because there's so much stuff to talk about in the realm of comics and superheroes. And we do it on a daily basis on the website CBR. But we have this amazing platform on YouTube with a ton of people who followed this site specifically in the run up through something we fondly refer to as the Infinity Saga in the MCU, which for a lot of you people who are listening is probably the last time that the MCU was entertaining to you. But they're trying to find their feet. And they're facing some stiff competition by the folks at DC. And so from the moment I jumped over here to CBR, and I'll get into my background in a little bit, I've been saying to them, you guys probably need a podcast. Like, you probably need something where some experts can get together, discuss all the things that are going on in the comics and superhero field. And a close friend named Nick, who I'm going to give him proper credit for this, came up with the idea of the name Hero's Journey, which I just thought was terrific. Because look, we're all on our own individual hero journeys, you know, as we go through life and as we follow a lot of this pop culture stuff. And each of the movies and television shows that we're talking about are on their own independent, you know, hero's journey through production and post-production. And these are the types of elements that we're going to geek out about. I keep saying we. I would like to introduce you guys to my producer, who is eventually going to become my co-host. I just know I'm going to be pulling her out of the shadows so that she can weigh in a lot more. Please say hello to Sierra Nuskovic.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to meet you all as a producer, a filmmaker, a horror genre superhero junkie. This feels like home. I feel like I'm coming home to it.
Sierra, I feel like I threw an S into your last name too. Nutkovich.
Nutkovich, yeah.
Nutkovich, yes.
It's a tough one. That's okay.
It's okay. We're going to call you Sierra, and we're going to be very happy that you're here. So it's exciting to me because when we were putting together the plans to potentially do this type of podcast and what would we even talk about, and I met you, you were into this type of stuff. You were a comics person as well, too. You grew up on it. And I think anybody that kind of works at either CBR or ValNet in particular, the parent company of this site and Screen Rant and Collider, they're all into pop culture to a certain extent. But the lane that we tend to fall into at CBR, and then myself specifically, is for comics and superheroes. And so what are you going to get from this show? Like, I want to get into a little bit, just a bit of background about who I am. But then for a lot of people who know the answer to that already, like, where have I been, right? Like, some of the people have been asking me, how come I haven't been doing this for a little while? So I've been covering the film industry for about 25 years now. Started in about 1999. I've been at different places like USA Today, Fandango, The Washington Post, spent 12 years at a website called Cinema Blend. And then I went over to CBR as their deputy editor of comics and superheroes in March of this year, 2025. So put a little pin in that. And it was a site that I'd always wanted to work for, primarily because of their focus on comics and their focus on superhero properties and being able to write about not just the adaptations that are coming to, you know, film screens and television screens, but the comics themselves, which are really important source material. And since being here since March, I've come to understand just how important, you know, that coverage is to the comics community, how much they are still pushing heavily to get into really experimental properties like the Absolute line that's taking place at DC, the Ultimates line that's going on at Marvel. And then, of course, this wealth of, you know, history and legacy that comes with characters that we grapple with on a daily basis when a new movie like Superman comes out this past summer or a movie like The Fantastic Four comes out. Why should you listen to me? You know, Sierra asks me that all the time. Like, why am I even listening to who this person is. So since I started in 1999, I kind of have been lucky enough to be at the forefront of this superhero boom, you know, what I kind of refer to as the golden age of comic book adaptations and the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the rapid ascent and almost just as quick a descent of the DCEU and the Snyderverse, and then you know, what James Gunn is trying to put together over at the DCU. I have covered it all for Cinema Blend. I have transitioned all those skills over to CBR, wrote a couple of books, one about the Snyder Cut, the release the Snyder Cut movement. If you're watching this, maybe you hate watching this because you don't like me anymore. Due to that, we can explore that if you want to sometime, Sierra. It's a fun story. Over my shoulder, we have a Spider-Man book called With Great Power, which documents the entire cinematic history of Spider-Man. You might find early on that this show is going to be pretty heavy on Spider-Man talk because we have an exciting film to build to in 2026 called Spider-Man Brand New Day. And we're going to be doing a lot of catch up with that. But by extension, we get Brand New Day talk. We get Avengers Doomsday talk. We're going to get into Secret Wars. And then at the same time, we're going to be juggling a lot of different stuff with stuff that's going on in the DCU. So that's basically who I am in a nutshell. Oh, where have I been? Yeah, sorry about that. Prior to coming over to CBR, when I was at Cinema Blend for years, I was co-host of a podcast called the Real Blend Podcast. I hosted it with two of my really, really close friends, Jake Hamilton and Kevin McCarthy, which had an extremely loyal following, and I'm very appreciative for all the people who tuned in to Real Blend on a regular basis. A lot was going on. I was coming over to CBR. As you guys know, Kevin was moving out to California. Jake had a couple of big things in the hopper, and we decided that it was better to sort of go out on top. But to be honest with you, I have definitely had that kind of itch to get back in front of the microphone and just talk about stuff that's interesting to me. And I've heard from enough of you guys who have asked me, you know, what is your take on whatever's happening? And I'll hear from a lot of people who will be like, especially when something like One Battle After Another comes out, or the Fantastic Four this past summer, and especially Superman, they'll be like, man, I just wish that I could open up my chosen podcast app and hear what you guys had to say about, you know, this big movie, and I can't wait to find out what's going on. And so I pitched it to the folks at CBR, and they said, you know what, you should do it for us. And so here we go. Sarah, you ready to join us on this journey?
Oh my God, am I? A hero's journey, perhaps? A heroine's journey?
Yeah, exactly. We have a couple of really exciting things to do in this debut episode. Let's set the table a little bit. We are going to be a weekly podcast. We had a couple conversations behind the scenes of like, how often do we really want to do this? I think that there is more than enough stuff going on from a week-to-week basis that we're always going to have something to talk about. If we're not talking about things that are moving ahead on some of the heroes' journeys, that movies such as Spider-Man Brand New Day, Avengers Doomsday, over on the DC side, obviously we have the Lanterns television show that's coming up. Clayface is shooting right now in London. We are all on pins and needles as we wait for Matt Reeves to finally go into production on The Batman Part 2. There's going to be plenty of information coming with that. Beyond, Avengers Secret Wars, we're going to have the launch of the X-Men saga. Like, there's infinite types of things we can talk about, and I didn't even get into television. So I think that these hero journeys, these journeys that these films and these television shows are going on, are keeping us very, very busy. But the other reason why I wanted to go weekly is that we do want to sort of push to have interviews. We want to talk to the people who are doing things that are really relevant to you guys in the moment. We want to talk to a lot of people who are creating comics that you guys are following, or who are behind the creative input of the comics that are inspiring some of these movies that people are going to. So look for some comics creators to get on here as well too. Hit us in the comments down below and let us know what creators you want us to try to get on Hero's Journey. I would love to effort some of those. And currently right now, the elephant in the room that everyone's kind of waiting to see how it plays out, although by this point now you will have had a chance to see it, is the Peacemaker finale. We were tracking Peacemaker all the way through and giving it what I think is really good coverage on CBR, and had a chance to talk to almost everybody in the cast. And that started with, and you should go look for this on the YouTube channel CBR Presents. We had the entire cast, John Cena included, come into the CBR suite at San Diego Comic-Con and tease a lot of stuff that was coming. Now, the behemoth in the room at the moment is the Peacemaker finale, episode 8 of the 8 episode season 2. Huge changes in store for the DCU, massive things, I'm assuming, that happened in the Peacemaker finale. And we have a very special guest joining us, so stay right here on Hero's Journey.
This episode of Hero's Journey includes spoilers for the Peacemaker finale and therefore the entire series of Peacemaker. So if you haven't seen it, maybe you want to stick around for some of our segments, then come back once you've watched the entire season so that we can all discuss it together.
Okay, it is time to turn our attention to the season finale of Peacemaker Season 2. Episode 8 dropped. Hopefully you guys got a chance to watch it. CBR was really privileged to be part of an hour-long conversation that we had with James Gunn following the finale, where us and I'm going to say about 10 other press outlets got a chance to ask questions, not just about the finale and Peacemaker Season 2 as a whole, but what it meant for the DCU moving forward, and some specific things about Gunn's involvement that I want to get into, and I'll save a little bit of that for the end. So yeah, I just want to talk about the finale, and I want to talk about all the different things that it had to wrap up. And what I found a little bit unusual about the finale is that it didn't have the kind of action beats and big set pieces that you might anticipate for the final episode of a given season of TV. And I think a lot of that was because so much of that stuff happened in 7. Like 7 concluded with so much action going on as our 11th Street kids tried to escape from Earth X and the confrontations with Peacemaker's older brother Keith, and the pin that was kind of left in that, you know, where Harcourt had the opportunity to potentially kill him so that he wouldn't keep coming after him. And maybe we get a chance to explore that down the line. The 2 vigilantes kind of showing how good they are in combat, you know, shooting their way out of that world. And when you get to this finale, it was a lot of like character development. You know, it was Harcourt and Chris, you know, resolving what happened to them on the boat, and this kiss that they shared at the I keep wanting to say Warrant. It's not Warrant, it's Nelson. God, I get my hair metal bands mixed up, but it's Nelson. And this beautiful tender moment that they have, and the meaning that it has for each of them, and Chris kind of grappling with this, you know, am I really the angel of death? Do horrible things happen to me and the people around me because of who I am? And so a lot of this was really emotional, sort of narrative-driven character development finales, while also then setting up some massive things for the DCU. And I think that's a bold step for Peacemaker to go in that direction. I was happy with the way that it followed the story, but was surprised at how little Peacemaker himself, the character, is in it, because we had so much other stuff to take care of with the other characters.
I feel like it folds into the big statement that James Gunn seems to be trying to make with this season, and with Peacemaker generally. I feel like this is where we've always been heading. I mean, this is also the filmmaker that opens Superman with a 13-minute long emotional conversation between Lois Lane and Clark Kent, and like it's truly like a scene from like a divorce drama in the best way. I'm obsessed with it. But I think this grand statement that they're making, that we were so heavy on in episode 7 of like what is the function of violence, and not just, and I think it's like he sees himself as the angel of death, but I think that there's also this element of feeling like he's also infected the people around him, because he says we in episode 7. He's talking about we are the like why are we doing this? Why is our first instinct to stab first, ask questions never? And I feel like that's, of course that makes sense. It's like that this is the resolution, is like this is what they're aiming for, is a world and a time where violence is not the only solution, where they can think for themselves, where they can make their own decisions instead of listening to those exterior voices. And so I think that makes perfect sense. And I think the drama lover in me, the emotional tormentor in me of characters, just loves that.
Well, and that's a great point, because when we get to the end of this episode, you know, this is when the 11th Street kids start to determine that we're done listening to the people that have been sending us down these paths. You know, for Adebayo, she's basically like, I started this job for my mom. You know, Amanda Waller is the one who I'm trying to please her. I'm trying to fit in with her. I'm going to do this government work because of her. Harcourt wrestling this entire time with, I'm a government agent, and essentially I missed it when they kicked me out, because of the problems that happened in the movie The Suicide Squad. I got back in with Project Butterfly, but am I actually happy? Am I working for Rick Flag, who has all these other ulterior motives going on, as we find out with Salvation, the Planet of Salvation, which we'll talk about in a second. And then Peacemaker, the scene in the hotel with Adebayo, which is so incredibly moving, where all of the 11th Street kids sit around and tell Chris, no, this is the difference that you've had on all of our lives. And at the time when you were making all of these mistakes, you were listening to your father. You were trying to do things that pleased other people. You were listening to Amanda Waller, which is why you killed Rick Flag Jr. What happens when you listen to yourself? And that causes all the 11th Street kids to get together and say to themselves, let's start listening to ourselves. Let's start taking a bad and turning it into a good, and using Vigilante's drug money that he's acquired over the years to create Checkmate. So there are two massive things from a comics perspective that happen in the episode. The creation of Checkmate, which we now know is going to be an established crime-fighting organization with roots in the comics. Them going through a portal, discovering a door into a hospitable world, seemingly, and launching the Planet Salvation, which, for people who are familiar with the comics or maybe unfamiliar with the comics, there was a run in DC Comics around 2007, 2008, I want to say, that dealt with Salvation as a location, a prison, where they could put metahumans. And Sierra, I want to tell you that in the conversation with James Gunn, he made it abundantly clear that the establishment of Salvation was a goal for Peacemaker from the beginning of season 1. Like when he came over to Warner Brothers and he pitched the DCU to the executives, to the studio brass, Salvation was always the finish line for this arc of the story, this part of the DCU. And he made it clear that Salvation, Lex Luthor's interest in Salvation as a place to stick metahuman characters. Obviously, we saw Lex's frustration with metahumans in the Superman movie. Superman's involvement in this, and also Rick Flag Sr.'s involvement in this, is all going to be very, very important to the DCU moving forward.
It's so interesting how much planning goes into building a universe. It's a lot of pressure on one guy's shoulders. It makes sense that he identifies so strongly with Superman. But I'm just so interested to see where this goes, because I always love these like big shifts that work on both like a world level, but also a character emotional level. I think like we could talk a little bit more about what Salvation is and what it means.
Yeah, so Lex, we know, wants to rid his world of metahumans. He has no interest in Superman. He's distrusting of people with these levels of power. There was a conversation between him and Rick Flag Sr. about like, hey, I can move you to another prison. That made me think that maybe Lex was being moved to this Salvation also. But I also kind of believe that Lex is manipulating Rick Flag Sr. That Rick Flag Sr. is not really the smartest, person on the board. And even though he's kind of mixing it up with Lex's crew in episode 8 of Peacemaker, I think Lex is the one sort of pulling the strings, and specifically had a chance to sort of ask James that as part of this hour-long conversation. And James confirmed 100% that like Rick Flag Sr. is not intelligent enough to go head-to-head with Lex Luthor. Lex is definitely the one pulling the strings here and wants Salvation to be created as a place where he can dump metahumans and not have to worry about them. You brought up a really interesting point, though, that I want you to kind of elaborate on, which is, by the end of the episode, the hook of the finale is that even though initially Chris Smith wanted to be by himself and wanted to keep himself away from all of his friends as much as possible for fear of bringing harm to them, he kind of got past that and signed up for, the establishment of Checkmate, was going to be part of that team, was going to be working alongside, the 11th Street kids. We get this somewhat cheesy, team walking toward the camera bit that we get, when everything's going right with the world. And then, he gets abducted and he gets thrown into Salvation. And what you were saying to me prior to us recording this is like, hey, he got the solitude that he was looking for, but, you know, probably doesn't want it anymore, right? Like it bit him in the ass a little bit.
The monkey's paw of it all. I love a be careful what you wish for story. I mean, I think at any opportunity to throw a character into the exact thing they asked for in a way that is their worst nightmare. Like what I love about the character of Chris, and I think John Cena does this so, so well, is that this is not a self-aware man. This is not a character who knows himself or, you know, he's not really in touch with reality in so many ways. And that's part of his journey. And like, it's, you know, he's on a trajectory. I believe in him. But it's I think that he thinks that he thinks that this is what he wants. He thinks, oh, I want to be alone. But that's of course not what he wants, because he's someone who the big thing he's been dealing with for as long as we've seen this character, for his entire life, is that he is the loneliest person in the world. This is a person who so desperately like yearns for connection, who has a sex party and is sitting alone on the couch because he just can't connect with anyone else around him. To put a character like that in true isolation on a planet, on a world where there's not another, or like not even human soul, not another like conscious soul that we know of, we shall see, is like, it's torment. It's perfect.
I'll go one step further in that he was so desperate for connection with the family that he had lost that he was willing to overlook a Hitler mural, you know, and not accept the fact that this is a Nazi Earth X because his brother and his dad were still alive and they liked him. You know, like Chris has tunnel vision when he's actually experiencing feelings that he wants to feel.
It is also like, I think that, and there is absolutely that, like that statement on Chris as a character. And this is something that I also love about a lot of what James Gunn does, is that it's also a statement about, listen, Chris, he's a straight white, well, not straight, he's bisexual, but like he's a big masculine white dude who really hasn't had to notice these things. He didn't realize that his father was a white supremacist for how long? And like, he can move through the world and not recognize those things. And, you know, Adebayo can't do that. I can't do that. It's like, it's just for a few reasons. And that statement on what this world is for who, and how it's not that different. And the fact that Vigilante who has that conversation with Adebayo is so interesting to me, because in so many ways he's like, he doesn't get what's going on, but in so many other ways he just like shoots straight to the heart of the thing. Like the conversation where he's like, oh, it sounds like you were having a conversation with someone who's ordering a sex worker. Sometimes him being just like so not like tuned into the social cues and the BS means that he gets right to the heart and the truth of the thing. And so it made so much sense to me that was the character who was like, yes, that is it. It's true. This world really isn't so different from ours.
And yet we do get a line in the finale, which I found to be really interesting. And I got a chance to follow up with James about it, which is, why is Adrian the way that he is? And it's because Peacemaker says it's because of the way he was treated by his older brother. And that's all we get. We just get a reference to an older sibling in Vigilante's world, because the bits that we got to see of his home life and the way that he treats his mom are bizarre and deranged, and no one should ever talk to anybody that way, let alone their own mother. But we did bring up this character with James Gunn, and he mentioned that there were two characters that he had written into Peacemaker Season 2 that didn't make the cut. One he had talked about earlier, which is Peacemaker's mom, who is very much alive in this world. And Gunn even had gone so far as to say that he knew the actress who he wanted to play the character and had written some scenes for Peacemaker's mom, who, again, very formative, I'm going to assume, in the part. But that's an interesting character that at least James Gunn thought about bringing into the finale, and would have opened up a whole nother couple of can of worms regarding Vigilante and his home life. So we'll see where that goes, I guess.
You talked about a bunch of different things in that interview about what the future of the DCU is and Peacemaker's place in it. Is there anything that you're able to share about that?
He said, he emphasized, and you and I kind of talked about this again before we started recording, that each of these DCU projects should exist on their own, and you should be able to just come to one without necessarily having to know all the other. And if people show up to the announced Superman sequel, which is Man of Tomorrow, and didn't watch Peacemaker Season 2, there will be something in the beginning where it sets up what Salvation is. Oh, it's a planet where we're able to throw metahumans and they can't escape from it. Boom, done. You know, it's already established. But he did say that Lanterns, the TV show that's currently filming, might be done filming and could be in some form of post-production, has a lot to do with the creation of Salvation and the ultimate purpose of Salvation. So Lanterns is going to be really important to the larger story that James Gunn wants to tell with the DCU. When he talked about the larger story that's being told, like he said, yes, all of these things are individual. You can enjoy them as individual things, but they are all contributing to a larger story. James talked about his directing plans and what's going to entice him to direct a specific project, because I asked him specifically about the struggle of passing the baton, because after doing all the work that he did to get the DCU off the ground, I mean, he essentially wrote Creature Commandos, but turned it over to an animated team, wrote and directed Superman, wrote the entirety of Peacemaker Season 2, decided he was going to direct the Episode 6 and Episode 8, which are two of the biggest ones. So his fingerprints have been all over it. But when we get to Supergirl next year, that's directed by Craig Gillespie. Lanterns is a TV show that has its own sort of showrunner room. Tom King is involved in it. Damon Lindelof is involved in it. Gunn is overseeing it, but doesn't have his hands directly on it. The next thing he's doing is Man of Tomorrow. And he did admit that personally, it's kind of difficult, you know, because he says, I identify as a writer-director. And I'm used to, because I've done some producing. He said, what I'm trying to be is a better producer. I'm trying to be somebody who can be there to lend the support to the creatives that I've brought into the process, but it's hard. But then as part of that process, he admitted, I know the next few things that I'm going to direct. And I know, and then Adam Vary from Variety, who did a tremendous job of moderating this conversation that we were having with Gunn, kind of followed up and said, okay, but how do you know that you're directing those? Like, what is it about those that you know that you're going to want to direct those? And he said, well, they factor directly into the larger story that I'm trying to tell. This larger story that involves Salvation, Lex Luthor, Superman, and Rick Flag Sr. So that, to me, was one of the biggest indications that we've heard yet about where James Gunn wants to go with this, you know, what he called the Gods and Monsters saga at the very beginning of the launch of this DCU. I was really, really excited to hear him say that.
The Gods and Monsters, I'm rifling through like the filing cabinet of the deep recesses of my brain, and it's pinging something with me. Is there a comic run that might be referring to?
So not specifically, no, but a lot of the things that were announced inside of this initial launch, where he talks about like a Paradise Lost show that would focus on Wonder Woman and her formation of that entire, at the Amazonian line. He brings up the Salvation run now. That's a big significant one that's going to be part of that. Gods and Monsters itself alone is not a comics arc, but what I think it was speaking to, because if you see the other projects that, like, Superman's obviously a god amongst us, and the threat of metahumans is something that I think the DC stories deal with a lot. Monsters, to me, like Swamp Thing was announced, and I don't know how much, you know, we're going to get in terms of that because of how busy director James Mangold is with his other projects. But Clayface is the one that's been announced as a project. You know, I think it really just speaks to the different corners of the DCU and where it can go. I don't know what the Brave and the Bold is going to become, but I bet you when we get to meet the DCU's Batman, it's going to have some type of a supernatural feel to it. The villain that they choose might be a King Croc or something like that gets into the monster side of it and allows Gunn to sort of explore the horror aspects of some elements of Batman stories that, you know, DC readers are kind of used to.
Which makes sense, because that's where he got his start. That's where a lot of these like indie directors who start out indie, making their own smaller projects, and like your South bys, your Sundances, that's where they get their start, and then that's where you take off, because it's such a great proving ground for something like these big genre stories, like, you know, like superhero stories, like Star Wars, like all of it. And so many of these directors that have worked on these things have come from that. So I would love to kind of see a little bit of a back to our roots kind of thing from James.
Well, and I'm overlooking the fact that like the first actual project in the DCU was Creature Commandos, which had, you know, Frankenstein and Weasel and the Bride of Frankenstein as significant characters. Like, this is where his heart is. Like, you're right. James's heart is always going to be, I think, in like independent horror. And if he can bring those instincts, storytelling instincts to the DCU, he's going to do it every chance he gets.
Which, you know, I'm on board with.
Yeah, I know that you are.
Do we want to talk a little bit about like the character relationships?
Yeah, well, because I want to just discuss them in terms of where it leaves a lot of us. We get Peacemaker stranded in Salvation right at the time when he and Harcourt have kind of come to terms with the fact that they actually do like each other. Peacemaker season 2 spent a lot of time with his friends coming together to go rescue him from someplace. And if this story is going to continue itself out, it feels like they're going to have to do it again, sort of thing, except now as like Checkmate, as an organization. Like, clearly they're going to realize that Peacemaker's missing and going to want to figure out where he went. And they're going to know that Rick Flag Sr. is part of it. I am really curious. Like, there was a question that I had that I didn't get a chance to ask James, which is, if the government in this world is creating a prison that you can drop metahumans into, because I think there's a line where they say like Belle Reve and Arkham aren't strong enough to contain these metahumans, so we need a prison that's strong enough to hold them. I wanted to know how Batman would feel about the existence of this prison. It feels like he'd be supportive of it, and I a little bit want to know how Superman feels about this, because I don't think he's going to be behind it.
No, and then we get right into Batman v Superman again. No, but I mean, it's funny because I'm such a fan of any kind of Trinity interactions. I have like a whole, those are always my favorites. And so I really love when they have these ideological differences and dynamics between them. And when like two of the trio are on one side, one is on the other, when they have like sort of a moderate position between the two, I'm very curious how that plays out, because I feel like that is such a natural position to take for the beginnings of this, for the beginnings of the coming together of this, you know, future, whatever the Justice League becomes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And especially because we have at least a sampling of the Justice Gang. And we're going to have the ability to bring someone like Guy Gardner over into the Lanterns project. Like, now, more than anything, I'm more curious to find out what that storyline really is. Because I know early on, James had said that the story for Lanterns is going to be really significant to what the big story of Gods and Monsters is. And now that we know that it's Salvation, first off, I think most of you guys should run to pick up that arc, that comic arc, Salvation Run. And we're going to have a piece on CBR that's going to dig deep into what that is and what it could mean for, you know, the DCU moving forward. But yeah, I want to find out how the Lanterns fit into that. The other thing too is there was a nice scene where Adebayo kind of resolved with her wife that, hey, look, as much as this pains me personally, we're going in different directions. You know, I do think I want to do something that is dedicated to not crime fighting, but doing the right thing from a government standpoint and contributing to making the world a better place, whereas your dream really does seem to be opening up this animal shelter. And if I did that with you, I'd be unhappy. And if you tried to stay with me, I'd be unhappy. And they kind of peacefully decided to resolve it. But there's some other, you know, tensions throughout the course of the 11th Street Kids and who's going to work together. And, you know, Sasha Bordeaux seems like she's coming over to help out now at this point, but she was on the other side and she felt a little bit guilty about how Argus manipulated Peacemaker, and Argus did a lot of things for Waller. And Waller, to me, okay, so I do want to mention one other thing. The last thing that James told us that I found relatively interesting as part of the conversation was that there was supposed to be a Waller show with Viola Davis. And for whatever reason, it keeps hitting roadblocks. And the way that he just described it, he described it as a rough road. But Viola Davis feels to me like, you know, when you drop her into this universe, like everything's going to change. First off, she's just a powerhouse actress. And that character is so significant to everything that's going on. Like Lex is doing some stuff. Rick Flag Sr. is doing some stuff. They're all doing it in the orbit of Amanda Waller. And sooner or later, you got to plug Viola Davis into this, because I just think, she's going to be the powder keg, that either blows this up in Lex's face or makes things even more difficult for Superman, or potentially both.
It plays into like what I think it also plays into like when are we going to, because we are talking about like the roadblocks, but the question of when are we going to see these characters next?
Yeah, so right now it's gonna be a while. Like this is the end of the road for 2025. The next big thing that we're looking forward to is on the Marvel standpoint, which is the Wonder Man show, which is coming in December. The next big DC thing we're getting is Lanterns. And then after that, it's Man of Tomorrow, but we got a while to go before that happens. James hasn't even begun shooting it yet. So, it's fun to talk about this stuff and to wonder where it's going to go. But unfortunately, it's just not like on next week's episode. We got to sort of remember all this stuff, take notes, talk about it on a podcast, and patiently wait for James to come along with the next thing. I can tell you the one thing that it's not going to be, and that's Peacemaker Season 3. As part of the conversation with James in this hour-long press conference that we did, like we asked him, okay, so you left a lot of these threads open, like Keith and his vengeance tour against his brother, because they left him alive. Peacemaker in Salvation, the launch of Checkmate. Like, when are we going to see all these things happening? And it's definitely not going to be in Peacemaker Season 3. What James said is, like, while the option for Peacemaker Season 3 is still on the board, these are storylines that are going to get picked up in future DCU projects, individual DCU projects. Now, that could mean Lanterns, and I do think Lanterns is going to deal significantly when it comes to HBO Max with the stuff that's happening in Salvation. My guess is that Man of Tomorrow is going to pick up significantly with the Salvation storyline, which means that you might get John Cena in Man of Tomorrow. But it doesn't sound like, an 8-episode traditional Peacemaker Season 3 is anything that's part of James Gunn's plan moving forward. All right, but Sierra, I got to tell you that there was a personal pride moment that happened during the James Gunn press conference. And so, as somebody who does interviews, like, you live for the opportunity to ask a question that you can tell the person hasn't been asked before, right? Like, sometimes they'll come out and say, like, oh, I've never been asked that before, or wow, that's a really good question. And I've kind of learned over the years that, like, sometimes that is used by the person you're interviewing to buy themselves a little bit of time, to think about, oh, what answer can I give you to this one? But I had been sort of marinating on the song choice for the opening dance scene for Peacemaker Season 2, which is Oh Lord by Foxy Shazam. I'm with you. You and I were sort of saying beforehand that, like, first time I heard it, it wasn't, to me, quite as strong of a choice as what we got for the first season. It didn't quite hit as well as Do You Want to Taste It? By the second episode, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is really catchy. I like it. And the dance is fun. There was a level of anticipation of, like, what are they going to do? How entertaining is it going to be? By the third episode, the lyrics started to really sink in with me. And I was like, oh, this actually fits really well with the motif of what the episode is. The chorus in particular, there will always be a wrong for you to right. And there will always be a war somewhere to fight, which to me spoke to this larger concept of just, like, you can try to do the right thing or the wrong thing at any given point in your life, but there's always going to be something else right around the corner that's going to require your attention to keep fighting for the bigger thing going on. And you could apply that to so much that's going on in the modern world nowadays if you want to. Like, there's always an opportunity for us to sort of stand up and have our voices be heard. And just, there's always going to be a wrong, to your right. Like, no matter how much you are doing the right thing or feel like you're doing the right thing, there's an evil out there that exists that's going to contradict or, counterbalance the good that you're trying to put out into the world, which I think is a lot of the big things that Peacemaker is trying to address over the course of its 2 seasons. So I was lucky enough to, because James chose to put Foxy Shazam in the finale, and have them, playing a concert on this riverboat that's in Savannah, Georgia, by the way, which my family goes to Savannah, Georgia every year for an incredible film festival that takes place down that way. And when I was watching the episode, I was like, damn, that's Savannah. And I know that James lives in Atlanta and probably shoots around Georgia. And then I was like, oh, I think that's Savannah. And sure enough, it proved later on, they took some sort of city shots, broader city shots. And I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely Savannah. And the Foxy Shazam concert takes place on a riverboat that's actually on River Street in Savannah that you can go visit anytime you want to. And the Nelson Show and the Foxy Shazam show both took place on this riverboat. But the fact that James took the time out of this finale to give Foxy Shazam the opportunity to play that song in its entirety, I was like, okay, so this is an extremely important song for James as a filmmaker, as a storyteller. He wants this song to get through. And there were specific shots of James Gunn's wife, Jennifer Holland, belting out the chorus, and just with this look on her face that could only be described as joyous. She is feeling the weight and the impact of those words. If there's always going to be a wrong to your right, and there's always going to be a war somewhere to fight. And the bit after is, God knows I've had some rough fucking years. And I could think about James and everything that he went through with the Guardians of the Galaxy, getting fired from that gig and having this trilogy taken away from him, and thinking, am I done? Is my career over, kind of thing? Am I getting canceled, because of old tweets that I had put out a long time ago? Am I not going to have the opportunity to tell these stories? And him having this battle, but then getting a chance to come back, and finish Guardians and transition over to DC, and things seem to be on the upswing for him. And I could feel his own personal journey through this. And so I asked that. I asked it in the press conference. I was like, look, maybe I'm overstating this, but like, it does feel like the lyrics to Foxy Shazam, to Oh Lord, are pivotal, not just to the foundation of the DCU, but they're important to you. That this idea of putting good out there to counterbalance evil, and the fact that you're always going to have some sort of battle to fight. And he admitted, he was very emotional and honest, and said, like, yeah, from the get-go, that song, I chose it for that reason. And it wasn't just, for the choreography. It was because of the story that song told. And he said, I guess he's very close friends with the lead singer and songwriter for Foxy Shazam. His name is Eric, and he said, I don't know if Eric's ever talked about this before, but the song mentions a character named Jillian, who the narrator of the song is talking to, and he goes, the guy wrote it for his son, and he wrote it as if to say, like, I'm throwing you out into the world. Like, there's going to come a point where, as a father, I can bring you up so far, and I can put you out into the world, but the world's going to be a really rough place. It's going to sink its teeth into you, and it's going to rip its fangs into you and tear you apart, but you're going to have to pick yourself up and keep going. And, I'm always going to be here for you to support you as you do this, but it's your own battle to fight. And what James said is that to him as a storyteller, to him as a writer, that was Chris Smith, that was the character that he had embraced, this, offbeat C-tier DC character that James has now elevated to household name, and it's the way that he wrote him, but it's also the way that John Cena performed him, and the emotion that John Cena brought to the character, where we saw this wrestler, this larger than life person, become vulnerable, and someone that we could embrace from a completely different perspective. And I think that has helped this show speak to people who don't normally care about superhero stuff and don't want, aren't interested in capes and evil plans, for $1 million. These are stories about characters and heart and emotion. And I think Peacemaker excels for that reason. And I think James had been tipping us off to this the entire time with the selection of that song and those lyrics in particular. So it meant a lot to me that I got a chance to ask him that question and then to get that answer from him and make him cry a little bit. I made James Gunn cry on a random Thursday afternoon.
I'm glad that heart is at the center of everything that's going on with DC right now.
Yeah, it proves to me without a doubt that the DCU is in the right hands. And, as we discussed, James is now passing the baton to other people, and he's going to have other people sort of carry the torch for him. But it cements that this is going to be something we're going to be talking about for a really long time. Speaking of talking about the DCU and putting a button on all of our Peacemaker coverage, we couldn't launch this new series, A Hero's Journey, here at CBR, without trying to get at least a voice from the Peacemaker cast and discuss a little bit longer with somebody who is involved in the finale, had a big part in season 2 in general. And we were so lucky to get Freddie Stroma to come on Hero's Journey. Our first guest, historically, he's going to be known now as the first guest on CBR's Hero's Journey podcast. And he's coming in from being part of New York Comic Con, where we're so excited to get a chance to touch base with them and discuss all things Peacemaker. So for the last bit of our first episode, we're going to throw it to our exclusive interview that we got a chance to do with Freddie Stroma, where we talked about Peacemaker, season 2, the finale, and all things associated with his career.
This is your friendly neighborhood producer coming to you from the future with a technical note. Thank you for your patience with us. I'm sorry to say that we have some technical difficulties on Freddie Stroma's end from the audio side, because he's coming to us directly from New York City Comic Con, which is a hectic time. So thank you for your patience with us. We hope that you enjoy the recording, and we'll have that fixed for you next episode.
We are so thrilled to have joining us on the Hero's Journey podcast, Mr. Freddie Stroma, star of Peacemaker, of course, playing Vigilante and able to dive into the finale. Freddie, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Excited. That was a fun finale.
It really was. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I want to start, is because you can now freely talk openly about the season. You no longer have to dance around any kind of spoilers. But what I want to get a sense of is like how different the pressure was on season 2 and Protecting Secrets versus season 1, when we didn't really know what to expect out of Peacemaker, and it wasn't part of a bigger universe. Whereas now this time out, James is talking about like, oh yeah, the finale sets up the future and establishes all these big things. Does it feel differently, or did it feel differently this time through?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, people didn't really know much about Peacemaker beforehand. The only thing that I remember, because it was an odd situation with me coming in with the recasting, was they didn't have any photos of Vigilante's outfit. So when we were filming, if we were filming anywhere that wasn't a studio, I had to have this massive cape put over my wardrobe, so in case anyone saw the costume. So we had to hide that. James didn't say anything about Checkmate, I don't think.
Right. Yeah.
That was because that was put in post on the building. So that was very secretive.
Oh, that's interesting, because I was waiting for the camera to pan up. I was like, all right, well, what is it going to be, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then it finally was revealed. That was interesting.
Yeah. We joined the chess league. It's a left turn. Yeah. I don't know much about that, but I'm getting people to try and explain it to me so I know what to expect.
In light of what you were talking about, of like, oh, James didn't tell you about Checkmate, in the lead up, because between season 1 and season 2, we had Superman, we had some retconning going on. How much did James explain to you and the rest of the cast what was going on to situate, and now post going into the rest of the DCU to set it up? Was any of that discussion had?
Well, I don't know. Specifically for me, James asked if I would help out for the table read for Superman, to just do some of the other voices, because I live nearby, and I was like, yeah, I'll come in and do some voices, and I just kind of filled in those roles. So I got to read the Superman script early on. I was lucky enough to get to do that. That wasn't necessary for the whole cast, but that was for me. So I knew some of that information before we started filming, because they were still filming when we started filming, and then there was kind of an overlap. So I knew some information from Superman. Going into the future, I know nothing. So I like, people have been asking, like, oh, are you gonna be in Superman or this or that? I was like, I literally, until we get a call from our agents about what, literally it's all very close to his chest. So I have no idea. This could be it. I could be done with Vigilante. I could be in season 3 of Peacemaker. It could be a different show. It could be, I know as much as you guys do.
The chance of it being a different show is actually really on the table, the way that James pivots to certain things.
People were saying that he's not expecting season 3, so hopefully that means I get to continue playing the character. But
all right, I want to ask you about this though, Freddie, because I got a chance to speak to James yesterday, and one of the things that he mentioned was that he did consider including Adrian's brother, Gut Chase, as a character in season 2.
Ooh.
And I wanted to know if that's something you were part of. Were you part of any of those conversations? Did you get to a point where you were at least like thinking how Adrian would play off of his brother?
This is literally the first time I'm hearing it, so
wow.
I'd have no idea. I know as much as you do. So it'd be from literally last night's episode. They talked about it briefly, saying I didn't have the best relationship. So
yeah,
I don't know what that would mean.
Yeah, he said there were 2 characters that he got really close to adding for the second season. One was Peacemaker's mom, which he claims to know where she is and says she's still alive. And
wow.
And the other character that he said he thought about including was Gut, who is
wow.
obviously someone who has, you know, he sort of created and has been referenced a couple of times in the show. But, you know, just to peel back that layer a little bit more on Adrian, I think would be pretty fascinating.
Oh, I'd love it, because Adrian's such an odd character. So there's just so much, like, nobody knows why he says the things he says or what he's doing. So it's great for depth of character. But yeah, it makes you intrigued to know what his past was. And I'm glad, like, we didn't get the brother, but we did get his mum, which has been so much fun. And yeah, so that was a really fun time on the show, for sure.
Were you super apologetic to that actress after between takes?
She's so sweet as she is, and as a character. Those are very, very fun. I apologized preemptively. I was like, as we were about to do, I was like, I'm so sorry for what I'm about to say to you. I'm so sorry for the tone I'm going to use with you. And I also apologized once in this last night's episode, when I start talking about, that line about her and Adebayo and Conolingus, that was really, really hard for me to say. Really didn't want to have to say that line. I was cringing as I was saying it, and I was like, I've got to like commit. I can cringe after the line because Adrian does, but God, saying that line was not fun.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
But how many times did you have to say it? How many takes?
I mean, we had a few. Luckily, with the setup it was kind of a narrow setup in the doorway, so they didn't need to do a bunch of angles for it. So I didn't have to do it too many times. Most of the scene was once we were in the basement, so it was definitely too many times for me.
That makes sense. I mean, it's interesting that you say that you didn't get to hear about Gut, because I know so much of an actor's process is prep before going on set. And so I was wondering, with a character like Adrian, like Vigilante, that's so, shall we say, different than all of these other characters you've had to play, how was it where you have to like access all of these emotions? How is it playing a character who kind of doesn't have that kind of access to his own emotions?
Yeah, it's tricky, because I'll read the script kind of as probably the audience sees it, where I'm just going, what? Why is he saying that? And so I have to come up with all my motivations, and it's really fun as an actor, because you have what you have on the page, and you kind of get to add characterization, but characters involved from the writer. So you get to really play with the characterization and trying to find weird reasons for why he says the things he says. And that's really fun, because then you can kind of, if you can make it real, you just know it can be really entertaining to watch.
You know, it's funny that you talk about finding motivation for lines of dialogue that you talk about, but Freddie, we haven't had a chance to discuss you and Cena chopping up a body of alternate Cena.
Yeah.
Is that a tough day to get past?
It was it was.
Let's go a bit back into the season and discuss some of the bizarre things Vigilante had to do this year.
I think it was probably more difficult for John. He was like, he was kind of joking about it, saying, "Yeah, this will be something to talk about in therapy." Just watching him chop up a very realistic looking version of himself. It was really realistic, so it was pretty gross. And and we had to, kind of pretend to be chopping up this fake body, but they had these little pumps with blood coming out, and they really went for it. And they had like hard bits in there, so like as I was chopping an arm, you kind of feel it kind of hitting bone. At least that's what it felt like. So it was really like, and then this blood was just pouring, and then of course they have it like you do a few takes, so it just keeps pouring and pouring. It goes on the floor. It started like creeping out towards our feet, and I was trying to not get my foot in it. For the most part, it was fun. It's it's all just props and
you have to remember that Adrian looks delighted while doing it.
Yeah, as soon as I read that in the script, I just loved that. The fact that like John's going through, or Chris is going through all this stuff, and then Adrian's just like this guy in a sitcom. Like,
amazing. Pivoting a little bit between season 1 and season 2, you wrote a couple issues for of a comic series, right? With Eagly and Vigilante.
I did, yeah. They kind of reached out and said, "Look, we've got like a page free per comic. Kind of, creatively, we can kind of do whatever you want." And I kind of had the idea to, since I just see Adrian, and I think this is kind of where James, he talks about Vigilante, saying like, he calls himself Vigilante. What would in true life, if someone wants to be a superhero, what would they really like to do something like that? And so he definitely feels like he loves the idea and being a superhero. So I like the idea of having a journal of saying like how to be a superhero, and he's giving advice, and then just in Adrian's voice. So I had a lot of fun with that, and the comics were really fun, and yeah, it was great.
Freddie, the conclusion was so much more character development than it was, sort of action and explosion. I think we got a lot of that action in episode 7. And in the finale, we get this outstanding motel room scene, where each of the 11th Street kids get to explain to Chris how he's changed them, and, not to get super deep over Peacemaker, but, I do want to know how this show has changed you. Like, how different are you as a performer from where you started, at the beginning of the season 1 or when you joined, to where you are now at the end of 2? I think this personally, I think it's shown off some comedic chops, but also your action skills in 7 are top notch. Like, you could follow Cena over to the Fast and Furious franchise.
You say that.
Hell yeah.
You may notice there's a lot of mask wearing and a lot of stunts who not
wait, that's
by
not
me.
You? Oh no, breaking news.
Yeah. Breaking news. The guy in the mask is not me. He's the talented, like multiple stuntmen, by the way, wear the Vigilante mask for that. But for me, I've really grown. I think the cast has really become a family, and I know a lot of people say that, but like we've really I've gotten really close to everyone. And
is there, in light of that, I feel like, is there another character that you feel like you wish, it could be in Peacemaker, it could also just be in the greater DCU, is there a character that you want to see Adrian interact with more, that you want to, it could be in a buddy situation, it could be who do you want to fight more?
I love doing scenes with John, so we didn't do as much this season, so I'd love to do more of our like buddy stuff back and forth. I don't know, Superman would be cool because he's just so good and clean, and Adrian isn't. I think literally, kind of most people, I think most people, it'd be interesting to see how they interact with Adrian. I didn't in this see. I think the episode last finale, I didn't realize. I think I expected the scene with me and Tim Meadows. I think that was just I thought it was they weren't going to use any of our dialogue talking about spiders. I thought it was just part of the montage, so it was just going to be inside, kind of slow mo of us chatting. I didn't realize we were actually using that stuff. He's too good. He's just so funny. And if you think you can improvise, stand opposite Tim and you'll quickly realize you can't, because he's just another level.
Did he give you a nickname? Everyone got a nickname from Tim over the course of the season.
I don't think he didn't give me a nickname. No nickname yet. Maybe in the future, yeah. That was very, very fun. It was just I thought it was going to be a quick pickup shot and we weren't going to do it, and then suddenly we just kind of went rolling and I just couldn't stop laughing. It's so funny.
You know, to drop another one on you, James admitted to us yesterday in the conversation that he spoke to Ryan Reynolds and wanted Deadpool behind one of the doors as the team was opening the doors in the quantum unfolding chamber.
Oh, no way. You wanted Deadpool in there? That would have been amazing.
And then he realized there's just too many hoops to jump through, you know, to get Marvel to play along with that. To that
I know, he already put the Spider-Man meme in there, so it's like he's already like making DC and Marvel like choices.
I know, but now all I want is Vigilante and Deadpool together. Like I can't imagine how those two would interact.
Yeah, I had an interviewer ask me a while back about the sort of comparison between the two, which I just don't understand, because like they're at the other ends of the spectrum. You've got Deadpool, who is like the most sarcastic, so much so that he's breaking the fourth wall, and then you've got Adrian, who nobody can understand. He doesn't understand basic human communication and syntax. Like, other ends of the spectrum, but I don't know, they both wear masks. I mean, I'd argue that Jim Carrey's The Mask is closer to Deadpool than Adrian, but I don't know. Yeah, well, I guess they have questionable morality and whatever else, but yeah.
But you're right. You're like Vigilante, especially as you play him, because the comic book version is so different, is so earnest. Yeah,
he's very earnest. I think we've gone back and forth of what James maybe would have thought I would have, you know, the character and what I brought, which I don't know if I bring a little bit more of the puppy dog side to it. I don't know, but that's how I see it. Like, he is genuine. I think his intentions are good. He's just his wiring is just all messed up, and he doesn't have any morality. But I just see this guy who wants to be best friends with Peaceman. He just wants friends. He doesn't have any, and he's an odd guy.
So, Freddie, does it make sense to you that the Checkmate people are going to go after Chris and try to get him back? Like, that seems like the natural progression of the story, doesn't it?
I guess so. I mean, I guess. Well, we have to. They don't. I guess they don't know it's happened yet. They'll find out, hopefully. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I don't know anything about Checkmate, so I need to do some research.
There's some great comics that you should definitely pick up. That would. I'm sure James has them that he can pass you away. Did you not get to go to Savannah for the big Foxy Shazam concert? I actually did, just because they did some pickup shots for Superman, and James asked if my wife would come in and do a sort of reaction shot, and she was down, and so we went. I just went as someone who was enjoying it. So they have like an open container law. Like, it was just like they were filming, and I had like a beer. I was walking down the street, went down to set, and Jen and James were doing their scene outside, that really great scene from the finale, and they have the guy who was just, you know, who loves his freckles. Like, we got to sit there and watch them do that. I have such fond memories of that time, because I was wrapped. I got to watch my wife just do a quick shot, and then watch those guys do it, and you know, it was just, I didn't get to see the Foxy Shazam performance, because we were out by then, but yeah, it was a really good time. That's incredible. It's so much fun just to get some of that behind the scenes, you know.
Yeah.
Just chill out as a regular and just watch it all come together.
Yeah, it was great. They were filming on that kind of main strip in right by the water in Savannah, and I was just relaxed and just having a good time and just watching all these people I love killing it. You know?
Speaking of the Foxy Shazam show, so this was, if I'm understanding this correctly, because you had replaced another actor, Chris from season 1. So you didn't get to do the dance in season 1. So the Foxy Shazam song, this was your first time?
Yeah, that was my first time. I didn't get to do the season 1 dance, and that was actually my final day on set. It was my last 2 days were the dance. So I stay in the accent when I'm filming, which is, it takes up a part of your brain. So it was just so nice, because I got to come to set, not have to do the accent, because my dialogue was done, and I got to dance, which I love dancing. It's fun. I just don't know if I'm good at it, but I enjoy it. So we had just 2 days of dancing, and I was making cookies and other things, bringing to set, and yeah, it was so much fun. But I was having a blast. We had that last pile-up at the end. We had a set like thing, but it was just difficult to get into it. And then James was like, let's just get everyone right now, just start like piling up and do like a thing. And then everyone kind of just started doing it. So that final one was kind of just what happened on the fly, sort of on the fly, but we did that in rehearsal, and that's what it became. So it's just funny seeing, like, I had to go run around everyone to get to my position on that side, and I was like, oh god, they're keeping this all in. We're all just like trying to get in position. That's all very real. Yeah, and fun.
I learned that during that moment, Steve Agee's concern was his vertigo, and can he get a place on the pile where he can lay down and not affect his vertigo?
Yeah, that's the thing. And Steve's like, what is he, 6'6" or something? Like, you don't want him above you on the pile up. Like, he is a tall guy. Yeah, it's funny.
Well, Freddie, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I'll get you out of here on this question. I know you have a super busy weekend. You're in New York for New York Comic Con, and you could take a victory lap for the show and the character and the work that you guys have accomplished, which has truly been incredible. But I want to ask, because the song choice, Foxy Shazam, Oh Lord, to me was unusual at first. And then by the second episode, the third episode, it really started to click. Of how it fit into the theme of the episode, and then the lyrics really started to resonate with me. And I was curious how much thought you gave to the lyrics and this idea of, you know, there's always going to be a wrong to somebody's right, and there's always going to be, you know, another battle to fight. And it felt like this kind of like thematic foundation for the season and for the show in general. Have you thought about that at all? And does the song mean anything to you personally like that as well too?
Yeah, I mean, it's James kind of, when we had dinner, my wife and I went for dinner with Jen and James before we started filming, and he was like, I have the song, by the way. And we were like, are we allowed to hear it? And he was like, yeah. And so he played it to us, and it had that same effect. When you hear it first, I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. And then every time I heard it, it just grew until I was like, oh, this song is epic. Yeah, he knows how to pair this stuff so well. Everything has a reason, and it's just so heartfelt. And it's great for generally just as superheroes. You know, there's always another battle to fight. You know, they've always got to keep going. And yeah, I think it just works really well. I just love the theme of this season as well. Just knowing that he's looking for who he is and his tribe, and he didn't know the whole time that his tribe was there. We were all there, the 11th Street Kids.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Freddie, thank you again for taking the time, man. We really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the first episode of Hero's Journey. We will be back here next Saturday and every Saturday after that. You can find us all the different places where you get your podcast needs met. And make sure you're back here next Saturday for episode number 2, where we plan to dive into a ton of things related to Spider-Man Brand New Day. We'll see you then.